Suffer. Suffer the little children. I'm kind of yelling at you. You got that enough when you were younger, didn't you? Yeah. Suffer the little children. And I remember one woman many years ago in another church I heard ask, why would God want the little children to suffer? It's the language of the time in King James period. It means allow. Allow the little children to come unto me. Let's look at the scripture, beginning with Matthew chapter 18, verse 1 to 6. Chris, when you have a chance, would you reboot, because this is dead up here? At the time the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened round his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea." Well, thank you for the millstone part, absolutely. And the next portion comes from Mark 10, the 13th to 16. "And they were bringing children to him that he might touch them, and the disciples rebuked them. But when Jesus saw it, he was indignant and said to them, 'Let the children come to me.'" There's the "suffer the little children," but translated into contemporary speech. "Do not hinder them, for to such belong the kingdom of heaven. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of heaven like a child shall not enter it." It's an important part. Whoever does not receive the kingdom of heaven like a child shall not enter it. And he took them in his arms and blessed them, laying his hands upon them. It's a good story. It's a very good story. I'm going to show you a video of that story. It has a little extra on the end of it, but Chris, go ahead. I think there's no question. We all know little children see the world differently, don't they? I don't know if you can remember back to when you were a little child. Before you picked up all kinds of ideas and concepts, a young child does not know anything about deception, about diplomacy. It takes him a while to learn, "Oh, Johnny, did you do that?" "No." "Did you ever ask your dog, did you do that?" And they, "No, not me." It takes a while to learn that sometimes it's survival to use deception or diplomacy. Initially, they don't know that. They learn that by experience. They realize that for self-preservation, unless I want to see the palm of somebody's hand or sit in a corner or time out, I better say something that sounds good. They don't have fear and worry about the future. Have you ever noticed that? They're very much in the moment. And we have to tell them, don't talk to strangers, right? They see everybody as good. And what about trusting? Do they trust their parents? Do they love their parents? Absolutely. And we know that even abused children love their parents, or the parent who is the abuser. They still will stick up for that parent. They are loyal. As a child, young child, he knows nothing about his race, about his religion, or whatever standing his family has in their city or wherever. They don't know, the child doesn't know that they're important or they're wealthy or they're poor. Initially just knows this is life. This is how it is. This is what is normal. Children's mind is kind of like film. Remember film in the old days? I had an uncle who worked for Procter & Gamble. He was their materials handling person, so he would design how they would load a railroad car to get the maximum amount of product in it. Smart man. And then one day, he brought me some photographic paper, a box of photographic paper, that you print pictures on. It came from one of Procter & Gamble's photo labs, and they were giving it away, so he accepted it because I had a dark room. And he sat in my grandmother's kitchen, opened the box, and counted the number of sheets. Now, perhaps you understand, photographic paper is sensitive to light because you put it under an enlarger, and the light from the enlarger activates the coating on the paper, then you develop it. You do all of that in the dark. So, they gave the box to me. I didn't know that he had opened it. And I took it into the dark room a couple of days later, and I printed a picture. And in the developing tank, under the safe light, the little bit of light, green light that I could use, yellowish green light, it came up very quickly, which was a surprise, and it came up solid black. Well, that was the top sheet. Maybe something happened. And I tried it again. Solid black. I finally dug down to the very bottom. Solid black. I think there were 100 sheets, upper 90s sheets in that box, and they were all ruined. It doesn't take much to impress film or enlarging paper. Just a little bit of light. Children's minds are kind of like the film or the enlarging paper. They take an impression of whatever they are exposed to. On the back of your bulletin, there's a quote of Charles Fillmore's, the second one in the list of 3 quotes. The little child has no consciousness of the tribulations of life, and the logical conclusion is that when we unload false states of mind and become childlike, we shall begin to realize what heaven is like. When we get rid of the baggage we picked up by the stuff, the experiences we've been exposed to, and then tried to make sense out of with our human intellect, seeing only the appearance and not the truth, that's the stuff that needs to be gotten rid of, needs to be released, needs to be let go of. Kingdom of heaven, when he refers to that, that's all the good of God, all divine ideas, all possibilities. Don't you want to be there? Don't you want to experience that in your life? Life, health, happiness, peace, prosperity. All good things. Because the nature of God is, you remember, absolute good. And it's always absolute, not just sort of some good, but absolute good. We want that in our lives. We want to bring forth good and not something less because of the limits of our sight. So to see through the eyes of a child, brings, at least Emily Cady thought, a special kind of quality to a life. On the back of the bulletin, the last one says, children are often nearest the kingdom. In one of his writings, Charles Fillmore talked about children believing in fairies. Did you believe in fairies as a kid? So there were fairies in the bottom of your garden. And he said, don't ever stop believing in fairies. Because he said they are real. They are energies. And children are open and receptive to see beyond the physicality, beyond what is solid and what the five senses tell us about. This amazing man I met in the early days in Unity, about 1966, 67, Brother Mandis. Sue also knew of Brother Mandis. He came to our Unity Church in Cincinnati, and he did a major lecture. It had two aisles like this. That church was set up very much like this. It had been a Christian Science church originally. And Brother Mandis went up that aisle, and he talked to a person here or there, and he came down that aisle, and I was over about where Kurt is sitting, and he walked past, then he turned around, and he came right back to me, and he talked to me. He was very perceptive. And what he said to me, I had no idea what it was all about, what it meant. For about 16 years, I just counted them up. 16 years. And finally this is it. This is exactly what he was talking about. And it had to do with my ordination and beginning a Unity ministry. Interesting man. But the point I wanted to make about him was he was in Blackpool, I think, England. And he got together a group of children as a prayer group. Now, maybe you wonder, how could he do that? Why would he do that? If, as Katie says, often nearest the kingdom, and if they have sight, an insight to things that we can't see, that they are able to see beyond the physical, well, he gathered this group of children and taught them to be a prayer group for healing. The results that came out of this group were astounding. They weren't praying for themselves. They were praying for people like Silent Unity at a distance. And the results were extremely good. Why? They believe. They believe without qualification. When they learn that by affirmation they form and shape things in this world, experiences, they believe. And so when they would pray for anyone, their faith was fully invested in the good, positive, healing outcome. Is that true of all of us? All the time? We may pray or affirm and have 5% of our faith invested in it and 95 in, well, that probably won't happen. Or we might be on the other end, 95% and only 5% in. Well, maybe that won't happen. We're rarely 100% invested, but when you are, you know what happens. When you see, as those little children saw. For several years, I got Brother Manda's little booklet. It was like a daily word, but not exactly. It came from England, and it was a delightful little publication to receive. Of course, Brother Mandus is long gone now, but what a man. What an experience to meet someone like that. And someone who had that kind of faith. He knew that children were special. They weren't shut down by this world yet. They hadn't made all of these discoveries that, oh, this is what you do, and this is how you get along in life, and this is what is real, only what I see and touch and smell and taste. No. They believed in fairies. And I want to say, and I do too. And I hope you will too. Those wonderful pictures, what were they taken about in the 1920s or earlier? Those fairy pictures taken, I think, in England, in somebody's garden. Anyway, they're simply God, the energy of God manifesting in certain ways. If you're seeing a fairy, you're seeing some good of God coming into expression. When Jesus said, unless we become as little children, we shall not be able to enter the kingdom of heaven. Perhaps you've heard in Bible studies, there are things called the hard sayings of Jesus. And this can be considered by some as one of the hard sayings. Hard sayings in that it's difficult for us to either accept or to understand or to live up to. And in this particular case, this, what you might think of as a hard saying, is like so many of the others. It contains a truth, a deep truth that is important. The unspoiled mind of a child, when I say unspoiled, I mean not taught to fear, not taught to hate, not taught to doubt itself, not taught to think it's not good enough or it's unworthy. Before the mind is spoiled with all of these kind of concepts, it's idealistic. Have you noticed that? It believes in good. It believes that only good things will come. Worry and dread, hey, that's for us. Kids don't deal in it until they are taught about it by us. The young child, his trust is not mixed with fear and anxiety. So, for us to live in this world of childlike eyes, it can only be done by centering your mind and your thoughts on the invisible world of truth. Looking beyond what appearances tell you. Looking beyond what your old-timer eyes see and your old-timer mind believes. A world of truth. A world of right useness of that truth. Of spiritual law. And that spiritual law, it's everywhere. It interpenetrates everything, all life, and all in which we live and move and have our being. Remember that phrase from the Bible? God in whom we live and move and have our being. That's seen through the eyes of a child. That's not seen through the calloused and myopic eyes of an adult. You have to be open and receptive. It doesn't matter how we've learned to be disillusioned by the world, by appearances. We still can invest our faith in that foundation of God. And to do that, it requires that we look at the appearances in the world and question, what is the meaning of this? You see things and you think, oh, golly, this is hard and this is difficult. But how often do you ask, what does this mean? Is there something for me in this? For me to learn, for me to see, for me to understand. And then the next part is, what is the truth about this? That begins to wash away the scales. When you know what the truth is about something, that dissolves the scales. It's like the Windex for the adult eyes, so that you can now see clearly, as through the eyes of a child, exactly what it is and what is the truth about something. In other words, when you see something that seems painful, you can begin to see the truth about it and see that it's only painful because you're thinking about it may mean to you loss of something, but really it means change of state. You know, you can't keep getting water from a well that only trickles and at the same time move over here and take water from a well that's giving you gallons and gallons a minute. You have to change your perspective, your point of view. We keep staying with what we know, what we believe is real. What is the meaning of this? And what is the truth about this? Each one of us can ask that source. We can ask the Creator. We can ask God as individualized through Christ in us to cast light on our problems, the situations we don't understand, the things that look difficult, the things that in the world we don't understand in the moment. And then we have to be receptive to that light and know it does respond to us. We just need to listen. Pay attention. Did you ever ask for guidance? And then your mind keeps going, oh God, come on, I haven't gotten my guidance yet. Where is it? Is it I can't see it. I don't know. Maybe I should start trying to figure out how can you hear the answer when your mind is filled with gibberish? Be still and know. Stay noisy and you'll never know. I'm putting words in Jesus' mouth, but that's okay. Jesus lets me occasionally. Just imagine if you lose faith in God, if you see the world only through the eyes of an adult, that what you see is what's real, what you perceive with your senses is your realities, and not with the eyes of a child who still believes and sees fairies, we lose joy, gladness. And we feel like the most solid foundation of the universe. And what is that? The power and the presence of God, which is omnipresent at all points, at all time, throughout time and space. Yes? That means that at every point throughout the universe, all the good, all the intelligence, all the love, power, of God is present in every point, right where you are. All the love, light, intelligence, substance of God is present. Just imagine if you lost hope and faith in that foundation. Where would you be? Lost in space. Lost in this world of illusion. Just imagine when that sense of that divine presence and something greater than yourself disappears. How could it profit us to have a millstone around our necks and be dropped into the ocean? That's a curious scripture, isn't it? Yeah. Kind of sounds like some of that Old Testament stuff. Where there's some consequences to things. It's easy to say, oh, that's just Oriental amplification and dismiss it as that. But it is true. It really is true. It is better to be beyond that power to harm others or ourselves through our words of untruth, our words of truth that are mistaken, distorted, which are untruth, still the same, through our actions that teach children to be adults and lose that vision of that higher power at work in the universe. It is better for us to be beyond the power to harm ourselves through error thinking or to harm others by teaching them our error thinking, and then be left to build up a mountain of responsibility for spreading untruth and disillusionment around ourselves, our friends, and our families, or in our own consciousness. Bottom of the sea, that's a good place. At the bottom of the sea, our power to break down, to destroy the faith of others, to destroy our own faith, would be at a minimum, if not possible. So you see what they mean. Better to be out of the way, where you can't harm yourself or somebody else by thinking things such as, well, there's only so much time, and then you do that thing that is one of those requirements besides taxes. Remember that? Only two certainties, some people say, death and taxes. I don't know why we put those words together. Death and life. They should never be in the same sentence. They're not related to each other at all. Life has no opposite. Death is not it. Death isn't life. Why would you relate the two? It isn't one or the other. How many times do you hear anymore the word transition? Do you hear it very often? No. I used to hear it in Unity all the time. Far better word. Back in '66 at Unity Center in Cincinnati, everybody was talking about, oh, she made her transition last week. Nobody said, oh, she died last week, like it's a final thing. Transition is more correct. It's a change of state. You boil water, and pretty soon the pan's empty. Did it die? Where is that water? It's in the air as water vapor. It's still here. And you know what will happen to it? It'll come down with the rain again. It's exactly it. Life and death in the same sentence. Eyes of an adult, eyes of a child, sees only one.